If you're a huge fan of the Olympics, your wait is almost over. Finally, we're like 9 days away from the opening ceremonies of the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. And heading to Paris, more than a dozen Michigan athletes are going to be competing for Team USA.
One of those athletes is Grace Stark, who's becoming a big name in track and field, and especially the hurdles. Let's get to Nick, who's live with Grace's story. She's from White Lake, and what a story she has.
Unbelievable when you consider the actual hurdle that took her down and broke her leg, and then the psychological one that she had to overcome to get back to where she's at now. What's also great about this is that we've had the opportunity to sit down with the athletes and their families. And when you talk to the families, you get to hear more of the backstories, the pregame rituals, the things they might not want everybody else to know. And in Grace's case, why the movie Remember the Titans has a lot to do with every race she runs. How excited are you? This is amazing.
I'm very excited. It was just been a dream since I was little, and I didn't expect to make it this soon, but I'm super excited.
Reality hasn't quite set in for 23-year-old Grace Stark. The White Lake Lakeland High School grad has been eyeing gold as long as she can remember. How long has making it to the Olympics been a dream of yours?
Ever since I started in sports, I always watched the Olympics. So being in an Olympic sport, I've always just wanted to go to the Olympics. So it's always been a dream since I started sports.
I don't know if I have a personal favorite.
Back home in White Lake, Grace's family, mom, dad, and brother, flipped through the thousands of pictures and scrapbooks, starting at the beginning when Grace was born and adopted.
This is Coach Holloway.
Her big brother has been encouraging her ever since.
Growing up, I mean, there's like a lot of movie quotes that we'll throw at each other. A big one before the races got very serious was the Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. But then it was like, okay, this is serious now, so I gotta say something a little bit more meaningful.
What's interesting is Stark was a gymnast before she began running track.
And I was watching all the girls, and I'm like, okay, she's a good little gymnast, but when she would run to that vault, like my husband was saying, the way she ran was different than all the girls. I said, Gracie, you're a runner. You're a good gymnast, but you'll be an excellent runner. I'm not a runner. I don't want to go into track. So I said, give track one season. And if you still feel you're a gymnast, more so than a runner, we'll go back to gymnastics. She gave it one season. She loved it.
In her very first meet, without any training, she took 6th place. But 2 years ago, the road to the Olympics almost became a dead end. When you broke your leg at that SEC championship, were you in your mind thinking, that's it, I'm done?
When I originally fell, I knew I couldn't walk on it. So I kind of was just like on the track waiting for somebody to help me up. I didn't think it was broken, and I didn't want it to be my ACL.
We were both there and took a very bad fall. It was pretty horrific. So I'm a nurse, so I looked at it and I thought, this is bad. Just the way it looked. And I'm like, I suspect this is broken. And she was not going to have it. She's like, Mom, don't even say that. I'm like, oh, you know, and so she was such a trooper, though. She had a severe tibial plateau fracture, and it's usually career ending. So but anyway, they put her in a wagon because the Gators won the SEC championship, and they're doing photos, and they dragged her around for the pictures, and she was such a trooper. I know she was in excruciating pain, but she kept that smile for the team. So what happened is the bone split like this. The femur came down, tibia split like a tree, like got hit by lightning kind of thing. And it was crushed on the top. And I'll never forget it because the surgeon came out of the operating room and she's just like shaking her head. She goes, that was probably one of the worst breaks I've worked on. She's the head of trauma, her surgeon at University of Florida. And so I said, well, honestly, what does this mean for her running? And she's like, well, I don't think she's going to be running anymore. I made the decision in that moment to not tell Grace. I was not going to crush this dream, but I was extremely emotional. So
you were crying in a corner where she couldn't see you.
She could see me. I couldn't stop it. but she thought I was crying because she had surgery. She didn't realize. That first night, around 11 p.m., I had a revelation. I was praying too. We're believers, and I was praying the whole day. And I was praying, and I felt the Lord say to me, you're forgetting two things. You're forgetting who I am, and you're forgetting who your daughter is. this is going to be okay.
So how did you tell her? When did you tell her?
I never did tell her, but she did her own. Grace is she's incredibly smart too. She did her own research and she kind of knew.
So nobody told her?
No one, I don't think anyone ever told her.
She'll hear it when she sees this.
Grace was never told doctors thought she would never run again. Honestly, it didn't matter. She was determined and rebounded in a way few thought possible. Some of that drive comes from her father before every single race. You are now the father of a 23-year-old Olympian. Do you see Grace that way, or is she still a little girl to you?
She's just crazy. She is the Olympian, but she's always just Gracie girl. Grace and my favorite movie that we watched together is Remember the Titans.
I love Remember the Titans.
And there's a spot in that movie where coach yells out, "Run it up, Herman, leave no doubts."
Run it up, Herman! Leave no doubt!
And that's kind of Grace's our thing. When she's getting ready to run, I'll send a text, I'll just, maybe just the initials are, run it RIH.
In Paris, Grace will have 24 family members and friends cheering her on. It would have been nice to meet everyone when we got together, but there are benefits to separation. What is one story or one tidbit that Grace would kill you for telling me?
Well, I can tell you.
The fruit roll-up story?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So she was always extremely determined to get what she wants, which could make it a little challenging when you're raising a toddler and they want something. And so she loves fruit roll-ups, but the kids had cavities when they were little, so I'm like, no, fruit roll, they get in the teeth, not the best for dental hygiene. So we stopped buying fruit roll-ups, and she was about 3 years old, and I get a call about 6 in the morning from my next door neighbor. And I'm like, Susan, I'm like, the phone rings. This is the old-fashioned landline back in the day, and I answer, Susan, what's happening? Did you know Gracie's over here? I'm like, what?
How old is she?
3. She got up. Got out herself, she was probably still in a toddler by what she had climbed out of, opened the front door, which is not easy, it's a big door, and got herself to the neighbors and knocked on the door and said, Miss Susan, I want a fruit roll-up.
At 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And she said she came over to get a fruit roll-up because you won't buy them anymore.
Did she get one?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
She always gets what she wants.
And if that's true, if Grace always gets what she wants, in a few weeks she'll be on a podium in Paris. Do you have a good luck charm or a pregame ritual?
I always wear the same socks. I've had these socks since the last Olympic trial, so 2021. So I've had them for a long time. And I've had to change them because they get holes and I wear a specific type of sock. But yeah, they're the same socks that they use in the kits that USA gives us, so that's great.
So I'm telling you, this is what I love. You can talk to the athletes all day long and you can read all the articles, but you never get the real story, Jason and Rhonda, until you talk to mom and dad and the family and see what's happening behind the scenes. Right? I'm hoping she got some new socks, but maybe not. I don't know if that's good. And by the way, Jason, before every show, I'm gonna scream at you like, "Run it up, Herman!"
It's so funny that's their moment, their kind of their message.
Yeah.
I love that movie and love that exact moment too. It's just such a great moment.
Right.
Aww. Well, it's been so great to watch all of your stories. Are we posting all of them on Click on Detroit because you have talked to many of these athletes' families?
Yeah, we're posting all of them on Click on Detroit. We're going to let them roll here on Local 4 Plus, and we're not done yet. I just sat down with Hobbs Kessler's mom, Serena, out in Ann Arbor. He's making a big name now in the track world as well. His buddy is doing a great thing, Zach Hammer, in sports climbing. So that's an interesting interview too. You'll hear a lot about how he also was not into sports, really high school sports, until high school. It was not one of those situations where you start as a little baby and you always were eyeing gold for Hobbs.
Wow.
Sport climbing is one of those ones too that people are just now catching on to, and some just find that they're amazing at it.
Just the athleticism and the focus and the training and just how much goes into it. You just pray they all stay healthy and they can compete at their best in Paris.
Absolutely. Representing Team USA, and that's the dream for all of them. In fact, that's what I asked Grace, what's it like to represent Team USA. That's the one point that she got a little choked up to. That means the most to them.
It's a huge moment.
We all did
Sure
watching
is.
that story. Really good stuff, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. And Nick is going to be headed off to Perry next week, along with Devin Skillian, to continue our coverage of our local athletes at the Olympics.
You heard Nick kind of talking about some of the other stories they have on tap, just like what you just saw, athletes connected to Michigan and their road to getting to the games and making their dreams come true. If you don't see it during NBC's coverage, you'll likely see it with ours. It's starting July 23rd on Local 4, Local 4 Plus, and on clickondetroit.com.